Something quietly shifted in the last few years, and most people haven't fully registered it yet. The purchases that used to make sense, the ones that felt like reasonable, normal parts of everyday life, have been slowly, methodically repriced. Not because the products got better, not because the experience improved, but because the companies behind them figured out exactly how much friction it takes for a person to stop buying something they've already made a habit, and they priced just below that point. Meanwhile, wages have not kept pace. The gap between what people earn and what everyday life actually costs has widened every single year. And the spending habits that felt fine in 2019 or 2021 are doing genuine financial damage in 2026. Quietly, invisibly, one small charge at a time. This video is about 12 specific categories where the math has flipped, where the value you receive no longer justifies the price being charged, where the combination of inflation, corporate pricing strategy, and psychological manipulation has turned what once felt like a reasonable expense into something closer to a financial leak you didn't know you had. None of these things are inherently evil. Some of them might still make sense for your specific situation. But for most people, most of the time, the numbers no longer add up. And the first step to stopping the leak is knowing exactly where it is. Number 1. Food delivery apps. Let's start with the one that has become almost invisible. It's so normalized. Opening an app, tapping a few buttons, and having food appear at your door feels like a completely reasonable modern convenience. The problem is what that convenience actually costs once you break it down honestly. Restaurants that list on delivery platforms pay commission fees that frequently exceed 25% of every order. Those restaurants are not absorbing that cost out of goodwill. They pass it directly to you through menu prices that run significantly higher on the app than they do if you walk through the door. Before any additional charges are added, you are already paying a premium simply for the privilege of ordering through the platform. Then the additional charges arrive: delivery fee, service fee, surge pricing if it's a busy time, a small order fee if you didn't spend enough, a tip for the driver, which is genuinely warranted but adds to the total. A meal that costs $12 at the counter commonly arrives at $22 to $25 through the app. That is not a convenience fee. That is a structural repricing of the same food. The delivery platforms know this math works in their favor as long as ordering feels effortless. The interfaces are deliberately frictionless. The subscriptions create a psychological sense of savings that actually encourages more frequent ordering. Someone who uses delivery apps 3 times a week is spending thousands of dollars annually more than someone who picks up the same food themselves. That difference, redirected into savings, compounds into something meaningful over time. Number 2. Brand new cars. The moment a new car leaves the dealership lot, it loses a significant portion of its value. Within the first year of ownership, depreciation on an average-priced new vehicle commonly erases 25 to 30% of what was paid. On a vehicle costing close to $50,000, which is roughly where average new car prices sit in 2026, that is $12,000 to $15,000 of value that evaporates before the first oil change is due. Average monthly payments on new car loans have climbed to levels that would have seemed extraordinary a decade ago. When you factor in insurance premiums that scale with vehicle value, plus interest on a multi-year loan, the true annual cost of new car ownership frequently exceeds $10,000 before a single mile is driven for enjoyment. Vehicles that are 4 to 6 years old occupy a dramatically different financial position. The steepest depreciation has already happened. The engineering reliability of modern cars means a well-maintained vehicle at that age still has a decade of useful life ahead of it. Buying at this point and driving it for several years means the depreciation you absorb is minimal, sometimes nearly zero. You can often sell for close to what you paid. The data on how genuinely wealthy people approach transportation is remarkably consistent across studies. They drive ordinary vehicles, they hold them for a long time, they understand the difference between a tool that gets them somewhere and a status signal that gets them nowhere financially. Number 3. Sit-down restaurant meals as a habit. Restaurants serve a real purpose: a celebration dinner, a meaningful date, a long lunch with someone you haven't seen in years. These have value that extends beyond the food itself. The problem in 2026 is not restaurants existing, it's treating them as the default option for regular weeknight meals. Restaurant prices have increased dramatically since 2019, in many categories by more than 30%. Portions frequently shrunk during the same period. A sit-down meal for 2 people, including drinks, a shared starter, and a modest tip, commonly reaches $100 to $130 in mid-tier establishments in most cities. That same meal cost $60 to $70 5 years ago. The profit structure of restaurants increasingly relies on beverages and add-ons rather than food itself, because food margins have compressed under rising ingredient and labor costs. A drink that costs the restaurant $2 sells for $14. This is not a criticism of restaurateurs trying to survive difficult economics. It is simply a description of where the markup lives, and therefore where the consumer's money goes. A household eating out 3 or 4 times a week is spending an amount annually that, redirected into home cooking and genuine investment, would represent meaningful long-term wealth accumulation. The occasional restaurant meal remains a genuine pleasure. The habitual restaurant meal has become, in 2026, one of the most expensive ways to consume calories that exist. Number 4. Multiple simultaneous streaming subscriptions. The original promise of streaming was liberation from the cable bundle: one affordable service, all the content you wanted, cancel whenever you like. That promise has been systematically dismantled, and what replaced it is a reconstructed bundle that in many cases costs more than the cable package it was supposed to make obsolete. Each major platform has raised prices significantly over the past 3 years. Each has moved its most desirable content behind higher pricing tiers. Each has deliberately placed exclusive shows and films across different services so that watching everything you want requires subscribing to several of them simultaneously. This fragmentation is not accidental. It is a deliberate strategy to maximize the number of subscriptions a household maintains. The average household now subscribes to multiple streaming services simultaneously. Added together, the monthly cost frequently exceeds what families used to pay for basic cable, for a product that still requires you to wait for content to be released and offers no live sports or news without additional fees. The approach that actually saves money requires discipline that the platforms are specifically designed to discourage. Subscribe to one service, watch everything on it you intend to watch, cancel, move to the next one, rotate through them over the course of a year rather than maintaining them all at once. You access the same content, you pay a fraction of the price. The platforms will resist this. They'll offer discounts to retain you when you try to cancel. That's confirmation that their original pricing had room to move. Number 5. Fast food in 2026 prices. Fast food was built on a single value proposition: hot, filling food, quickly, cheaply. 2 of those 3 attributes remain partially intact. The third has largely disappeared. Menu prices at major fast food chains have climbed 50% or more since 2019 in many cases. A meal at a counter-service burger chain, a drink, a main item, and a side, routinely reaches $12 to $16. Some locations in high-cost cities exceed that. The same meal cost $7 to $9 5 years ago. The value equation that justified fast food, that it was meaningfully cheaper than alternatives, no longer holds in most comparisons. A simple home-cooked meal using whole ingredients costs less, takes only marginally longer, and doesn't carry the nutritional costs that come with industrially processed food. At current fast food prices, you are paying a premium for speed, convenience, and familiarity, not for savings. For someone who relies on fast food as a frequent meal solution, the annual expenditure has become genuinely significant. Redirecting even half of that spending toward home cooking frees up money that compounds meaningfully over a decade. The habit made financial sense when it was formed. In 2026, the math has moved. Number 6. Flagship technology upgraded on release cycles. The newest flagship smartphone costs well over $1,000. The one released 2 years before it costs roughly half that on the used market. The functional difference between them, for the way the average person actually uses a phone, is largely imperceptible. Technology manufacturers have refined planned obsolescence into an art. Software updates slow older devices, batteries are engineered with finite cycles, repair costs are deliberately set close to replacement costs. The entire ecosystem applies constant pressure toward buying the newest version, not because the newest version is meaningfully better, but because the business model depends on regular replacement cycles. The performance gap between current flagship devices and devices from 2 or 3 generations prior has narrowed dramatically. The camera improvements are incremental, the processing speed improvements are irrelevant for the applications most people use daily, the design changes are cosmetic, yet the price premium remains enormous. Buying technology that is 1 or 2 generations behind the current release, particularly refurbished or certified pre-owned, provides the same functional experience at dramatically lower cost. Someone who upgrades technology every cycle, compared to someone who buys thoughtfully and holds devices until genuine failure, accumulates a difference of thousands of dollars over a decade. Invested consistently, that difference compounds into something that a marginally sharper camera could never justify. Number 7. Elaborate weddings funded by debt. A wedding is a meaningful event. The commitment being made is real and worth marking. The question is whether the financial cost of marking it has grown so detached from what the moment actually requires that it has become a source of damage to the very partnership it's celebrating. Average wedding costs have reached levels in 2026 that represent a significant portion of annual income for most couples. The wedding industry has perfected the art of attaching premium pricing to anything labeled for a wedding: venues, flowers, photography, catering. The same space, the same photographer, the same food costs meaningfully more when the occasion is a wedding than when it is any other event. The couple pays for the label as much for the service. Starting a marriage with significant debt or depleting savings that took years to accumulate introduces financial pressure into a relationship at its earliest and most vulnerable stage. Research has consistently identified money as one of the primary sources of conflict in marriages. Beginning with a financial deficit in the name of a single day of celebration creates a headwind that affects the years that follow. A meaningful ceremony does not require financial devastation. The legal and emotional substance of a marriage is identical whether the celebration costs $3,000 or $30,000. Couples who spend thoughtfully within their genuine means, rather than to match an industry-set expectation, begin their shared financial lives from a position of strength rather than debt. Number 8. Travel that exceeds your financial reality. Travel has real value. Seeing different parts of the world, experiencing unfamiliar cultures, creating memories that last. These are genuine goods. The issue in 2026 is not travel itself. It is travel funded by credit card debt that outlasts the experience by years. Airfare, accommodation, meals, and activities on a meaningful trip add up to numbers that, for many households, represent weeks or months of savings. When that trip goes on a credit card at 18 to 24% interest, the real cost of the experience includes every interest payment made over the months or years of repayment. The vacation ends, the financial consequence continues. The same genuine experience of travel is available at dramatically different price points, depending on the choices made. transportation by road instead of air, accommodation in locally owned rentals rather than branded resort hotels, meals from markets and local restaurants rather than tourist-oriented dining. These choices do not eliminate the experience. In many cases, they deepen it by placing you closer to the actual texture of where you are. Travel that lives within your financial means is genuinely enriching. Travel that creates debt you carry for 2 years afterward is a transaction in which the cost exceeds the value, no matter how good the photographs look. Number 9. Buy now, pay later for everyday purchases. Split payment services have made financing available for purchases that previous generations would have simply saved for or gone without. The psychological mechanism is straightforward. A payment of $40 4 times feels categorically different from a payment of $160 once, even though they're identical amounts. These services exist and have grown enormously because they're profitable. They're profitable because people buy things they would not have bought if required to pay the full price immediately, and because a meaningful percentage of users miss payments, pay late fees, and ultimately pay more than the original price tag. The consumer behavior research around split payment services consistently shows that users spend more than they would have otherwise, not slightly more, but significantly more. The friction of a large upfront payment is a useful financial signal. It's your brain asking if this purchase is worth what it costs. Split payment services remove that signal and replace it with a number small enough to feel easy. Financing a depreciating consumer product, clothing, electronics, home goods, means you're paying interest on something that is simultaneously losing value. The object is worth less the moment you own it than it was the moment you bought it. Debt financing makes it cost more than the price tag said. The gap between what you paid and what it's worth grows in 2 directions simultaneously. Number 10. Name brand everything. Store brand and generic products in most consumer categories are manufactured to equivalent standards as the name brand counterparts, in some cases in the same facilities. The active ingredient in store brand pain relief is chemically identical to the active ingredient in the branded version at twice the price. The laundry detergent performs the same wash. The canned goods contain the same contents. The premium attached to name brands funds marketing, not quality. Advertising budgets that exist to create emotional associations between a logo and a feeling of reliability or prestige. You pay for that feeling. The product itself is frequently identical. Extended to clothing, the markup becomes more extreme. A basic garment from a luxury brand commands a price that reflects almost nothing about the material or construction. It reflects the logo. You're paying to wear someone else's advertising. The garment wearing the logo and the garment without it are frequently made in similar conditions from similar materials. Systematically choosing store brands and generic alternatives across household spending categories saves a meaningful percentage of consumer spending annually, with no reduction in actual product performance. That money, redirected consistently, accumulates into something the name brand never could. Number 11. Subscription boxes. The subscription box model is built on a genuine psychological insight. People love the feeling of receiving something unexpected, the anticipation of a package, the small dopamine release of opening something curated for you, the sense of being surprised. These are real pleasures that the industry has packaged and monetized. What they have also done is wrap that pleasure in economics that work against the subscriber. The products inside a typical subscription box retail for less than the price of the box itself. Otherwise, the company could not profit. You are paying a premium to receive items you did not specifically choose and might not have wanted. The curation adds cost without necessarily adding value proportional to that cost. Cancellation is engineered to be difficult. The services understand that inertia is their most valuable retention tool. People continue paying for boxes they no longer open with the enthusiasm they once did, simply because canceling requires a step they haven't gotten around to taking. The recurring charge continues. The box accumulates. If you genuinely enjoy specific products, purchasing them directly costs less than receiving them through a curated box. If the surprise itself is what you value, that is a legitimate pleasure, but recognize it as entertainment with a price tag attached, rather than a savings mechanism. Number 12. Daily premium coffee as an unconsidered habit. A single specialty coffee drink at a major chain in 2026 costs $7 to $9 in most markets. That is not a price for coffee. It is a price for a branded experience, a moment of daily ritual, a social signal, and the convenience of having someone else make it for you. All of those things have genuine value. The question is whether you have consciously decided they are worth what they cost. A daily $7 coffee habit costs $2,500 annually. Quality beans brewed at home cost a fraction of that for the same caffeine and, with minimal practice, comparable flavor. The difference, invested consistently over a working life, accumulates into a genuinely significant sum, one that most people have never calculated because the habit formed before the math was ever considered. This is not an argument that nobody should ever buy coffee from a cafe. It is an argument for consciousness, for knowing what a habit costs before deciding it is worth it, for making the choice deliberately rather than by default. Every item on this list shares the same underlying structure. A product or service that once offered reasonable value at a reasonable price has been repriced through inflation, through corporate strategy, through psychological design to extract more than it delivers. And the spending continues not because people have decided it is worth it, but because habits run on autopilot until something interrupts them. This video is the interruption. The money flowing out through these 12 categories is not gone forever. It is redirectable. Every dollar that stops being spent unconsciously can be spent, or saved, or invested with intention. The accumulation of those redirected dollars across years and decades is the practical difference between financial freedom and financial anxiety. You do not have to eliminate every item on this list. You have to examine each one honestly and decide, not by default, not by habit, not because everyone around you does the same thing, but by actual deliberate choice whether what you receive is genuinely worth what you pay. In 2026, that kind of awareness is not just useful, it is one of the most valuable financial skills you can have. If this reframed how you look at where your money actually goes, share it with someone who needs to run the numbers. And if you want to keep going deeper into the financial decisions that quietly determine how life turns out, stick around. That is exactly what this channel is here for.